Thank you very much, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be at the home of the Premier Football Club in Colchester. And I've been past it on the motorway a few times, but never actually been here. But being a Southampton fan, I think we were here a few years ago in the depths of our relegations in about 2009. So, but I didn't actually come myself. Anyway, my name's Rob Riddleston, as it says on the screen there. I head up the Barclays Transport and Logistics industry team. But I'm a corporate banker, but I have focused upon the logistics and transport industry for about 15 years, and I've headed up the team for about 10. But I always say, when I'm ever in front of a crowd of people, people from the sector, I'm never ever going to know it as much as you do, but I'll know it a hell of a lot more than my competitor banks, is my strapline. We live in a dynamic world, and I guess the world of logistics is very dynamic, and anyone that's in the VW supply chain industry at the moment, I suspect, is feeling dynamism at the ultimate. But that is just a good example of how things can change and how the industry needs to adapt. Now, I'm going to talk for about 10 or 15 minutes based around two surveys that Barclays has done, which I think are available around in the room, and they're certainly available on our website. But I'm going to run through two surveys that we've completed. The first is one on the confidence index, which we produce every 6 months, and another one which was produced in the autumn of last year on the last mile issue. And this is very much, these aren't Barclays views, these are views that we've collated from the industry, that the industry is telling us about what they're thinking at the moment, what they're thinking about the future, and how that future may develop. So we produce a survey every 6 months, and the last one we produced, in fact I'll just go down, over the last 6.5 years, that's going back to 2012, we produced this confidence index, which shows about 50 is, just about neither positive nor negative. It started off in 2011, 2012, just above 50, and then we saw a really big rise through to 2013. And the last two have seen a small, and I hasten to add, small falling back of confidence. And the one that we will be producing and publishing at the end of October will show another small fall there as well. But I think the industry is in very good shape, don't get me wrong. But confidence, you can't keep confidence going at a high level, and there are a few issues that, of course, we need to be aware of. Certainly in the last 6 months, China, which was a rapidly growing economy that couldn't go do anything wrong, is started to see a few tensions, etc. And certainly the trade, inbound trade into China from their imports, our exports, in other words, to China and indeed the West, has been falling as their economy slows. But it's nice to have a slowing economy from 7% growth. If only we could get anywhere near there. We've also had the Greek situation, which has caused just unsettling facts within the European scene, and we've had disruption around the tunnel, which anyone that's running trucks to the continent will only be too well aware of, whether they're affected directly or whether they're stacking on the M20. Consolidation within the industry continues. There have been a number of high-profile mergers announced in the last few months, as obviously DHL and TNT still debating with the regulators. But we've had Norbert Dentressangle being taken over by XPO, which when I heard, I was up at Multimodal, the conference at the end of April, the day that was announced. I don't think I met anyone that saw that one coming, and indeed talking to some senior people within Norbert Dentressangle, I don't think they saw it coming either. But XPO is now the new name. So a lot of consolidation at the top level. I think further down there is always going to be consolidation going on. I think it is now more and more difficult for businesses to, the smaller the business, the more challenging it is in terms of meeting all those regulations. So it's important, I think, but the larger the size of the business, they are able to cope with some of the regulation that the government throws at everyone. There's continuing more collaboration. Collaboration within the logistics sector has been talked of for as long as I've been covering it, and a lot longer than that, I'm sure. I think collaboration with customers is improving a lot, but collaboration between logistics companies is, well, it's talked about, but there's less of it. I mean, how do you fill that lorry that's coming back from Manchester that's empty? That's the kind of the number, the factor of how do you actually solve that issue. We've obviously seen the shortage of drivers, though I think that's eased a little bit from it was this time last year. But there's still a challenge, I'm sure, for anyone that's running a business that requires drivers in attracting them and retaining them. And there's also starting to see a bit of shortage of warehouse space, good quality warehouse space in the right places. So I'd be interested in, when we have some Q&A later, whether people are actually seeing that. But we're starting to see that as a trend that's starting to come through. In our most recent survey, we also asked about EU membership. And it was a very simple question: do you think we should stay in? Do you think we should go out? And as you can see there on the screen, it was a resounding 93% of respondents said that we should stay in. So I think that's not necessarily the views of Barclays, may I hasten to add, but from a personal point of view, I think it's spot on. We also asked questions about the image of the industry in respect of women. As I say, this will be published in more detail in about a month's time. But basically, the main reason for low levels of women within the sector was very much the image. And Lynn and I were talking. Where's Lynn? Lynn were talking. Lynn's from the CILT, and we were talking about this earlier over a cup of coffee, and it is a challenge. I think looking around the audience tonight would show how the fact that women are not as represented in the industry as I'm sure lots of people would like. So I think it's a challenge to the industry. How can it achieve more women within the sector? Right, now I mentioned the other report that we did, which was published in the autumn of last year, but everything it said in there I think is equally as important then as it was now. And that is very much around the last mile. We call it the last mile report. And I don't know whether there are copies around, but they are available on our website, and I've got one or two here. Basically, what do we mean by the last mile? Well, we all love buying things online, don't we? That's whether it's on our PC at home, or our PC at work, or our mobile. And as soon as we buy something online, we automatically think it's going to arrive tomorrow and it's going to be cheaper. Because it's got to be, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're doing the retailer a favour by buying online. And, of course, it can be, providing the item that you're buying fits in your letterbox. But providing it doesn't, if it doesn't, rather, you're then into the how do you actually deliver that item to the consumer. There's obviously conflicting dynamics within that. You've got what the retailer wants, what the consumer wants, which is everything, of course. But of course, there's how does the logistics operator actually manage that? How do they develop? This is a changing world. I think we've had people buying goods on the internet for 15 years, I guess. When we first started, you were very nervous, weren't you? You thought, who is this person at the end of this click of the button? You know, am I giving my credit card details away? But now we do it quite freely, and we trust it. But it is changed a lot. In the last 5 years, volumes have increased incredibly. But how does the logistics industry rise to that challenge? And what will it look like in 10 years' time? I would ask you. It's changing the way the premises, I mean, the actual real estate, both of the high street itself. Clearly, there's challenges on the high street for retailers who are probably not selling as much directly through shops. And also for the logistics industry that needs to have perhaps hubs a little bit closer to where people are to be able to get that delivery the next day, if that's what people want, or perhaps it might be the following day. Where will it look like in 10 years? What's happened there? Have the wheels come off? What will it look like in 10 years' time? So there's plenty of stats. I don't know whether you probably can't see the details on there, but basically this is saying here that the main items that are being bought online are clothing, music and film, food, books, health and beauty products. It's not something I buy too much of myself, and electrical goods. And so, I mean, it's all the stuff that people do buy. The one at the end, the sports kit, is the stuff that probably I buy more. But anyway, you're able to go on. You've got such a selection, isn't it? You can buy virtually anything online, and it will be delivered to you quite often within 2 days, and it might be coming from Germany. Now, the delivery methods, the key ones, of course, is through the letterbox, direct delivery volumes, which is on the right-hand side there, 64% there, and but there's an increasing number, 34%, of click and collect. Now, retailers quite like that because they actually, whilst it causes them to store those goods in the shop, it means you've got to actually go to the shop to collect it, and it's there, and you know it's there, so you're not wasting your journey. But you might also buy something on the way. And then there are other delivery methods, and that's coming at 14%. But sorry, that's 1.4%. But it is increasing. We're getting increasingly the drop boxes at train stations, at tube stations, garages off licenses. I got ordered some printer cartridges, and I got a note through the door saying it's your local off license. So you wander up there, and lo and behold, you buy a bottle of wine, don't you? Well, that was my excuse anyway. So there are all those different methods, and what's going to emerge, and it's not going to be one solution, but this how this is developing, I think, is quite fascinating. So what does the consumer want? Well, of course, the consumer wants everything, but the top three there, a cost, price, then speed and flexibility. Reputation in fourth place, I think, has moved down. I guess 15 years ago, when we were buying something on the internet, you'd be a bit worried about is it actually going to arrive? What am I buying, etc. But I think that the trust is there now. The consumer is, of course, a hard taskmaster. I say service, range, and range of items, and speed were the main items that this survey decided was the key issue. Innovation, people aren't too worried about it, but I guess it's a lot easier for consumers, for retailers to put new items onto the website as a starter. So the retailer is obviously pretty important in this, and the click and collect at 29% is the leading method of that they like, their preferences. As I said, for the reason that people wander through their stores and probably buy something else. Home delivery, 21%. That's the one that actually can get through your letterbox without having a little card which says in 24 hours' time you can drive 5 miles and collect it from the local sorting office. There's home delivery by courier. Now, that is the challenge. Sometimes you need 2 men in a van, sometimes it would just be one. But of course, what happens if that person's not at home? What do you do? Do you leave it with a neighbour? Do you try and put it through the cat flap? Or do you have to come back and deliver it again? And how do you make a profit out of that? So there's all those challenges around the actual home delivery side of things. Returns are a big issue because people buy things on the internet, and whilst I was saying I think we generally trust things, if you're buying clothes on there, you don't know quite what the size is, you haven't tried it on, and there are a number of companies that are focusing, I wouldn't say they're specialising, but they've certainly got a high focus on dealing with returns. Clipper talk a very good story. That I think they work for John Lewis, and they do a lot of returns. Now they make money out of that. They build that into their operation, because returns are a big issue. Now, of course, I'm sure nobody in this room has done it, but I hear some people do buy a dress or a suit and wear it overnight, or wear it to that wedding, and then return it the next day. You apparently had Tony Mannix that tells the story. You've got wedding invitations in the top pocket have been returned, or there's a wine stain on the dress and saying I just spilt it when I opened the package. So, but I mean, retailers do say we will return it, and so the industry, the logistics industry, has got to meet that. So, but you can make money out of it, but you've got to make sure you've got your costings right. So in terms of the logistics landscape, the big player, of course, is still the Royal Mail at just under 29%, and then you've got a whole raft of others. Now, remember, this survey was done this time last year, so it does feature people such as CityLink. Of course, don't exist anymore, and we've got Whistle as well in there. So it is quite fragmented. But who's going to be the winner? I talked about consolidation earlier. I think consolidation in this side of the this part of the industry is going to be very interesting. Right, now, what about future developments? Tracking is very important. I sometimes feel personally that almost sometimes you get too much information. I get an email or a text saying it's been taken off the shelf and it's been put into a tray, and then it's being, an hour later you get it's being moved to another part of the warehouse. But I mean, seriously, you do want to know when you're going to get your item delivered, and it's having that information. Of course, phones are a great way to deliver that. Excuse me, either by email or by text. The items can be tracked very easily. You also see the hub and spoke methods. I think there's going to be smaller distribution centres around to cope with this type of business, because you need to be closer to the consumer. To be debated. You've got to have an integrated return solution, as I was saying there previously, and I guess with certainly the larger retailers, you've got the long-term partnerships. Everyone wants a long-term partnership, because changing your logistics provider is a pretty important issue for a retailer, because you never know quite what's going to happen, and so it's all about long-term partnerships. So, in summary, the market is growing. That this is the last mile market is growing. Priorities for the retailer and the logistics firm and the consumers are not always aligned, so you're going to get that mismatch and that challenge. Technology solutions are emerging, and they will gain a consensus as to the best way forward. Real estate demands are changing, both for retailers and for the logistics industry. And we've also got the future. There's Amazon are trying drones. What about 3D printing? Somebody puts you can have your, is it Mercedes, have something put in your boot of your car? There's a delivery method there as well. But it's all driven as well by this enormous changes in the retail world around peaks leading up to Christmas. There was Black Friday. I made the mistake of, my wife and I had been to Barcelona for 3 or 4 days, came back on a Friday. I still got the day off, so we decided to go shopping. Now, little did we realise it was Black Friday. We wondered why there was all these people there. I mean, it was absolute bedlam. Anyway, that causes real challenges to the logistics industry. You've got Cyber Monday. I don't know, does that follow Black Friday? There's Panic Saturday, which presumably is the last Saturday before Christmas. You've got all these issues. Ideally, of course, from the logistics world, you want a nice even flow throughout the 12 months. Doesn't happen, of course, but you've got all those challenges. So I guess really what I'd like to do is have my crystal ball out and really know what the that last mile logistics solutions will end up in 10 years' time. I think it's a real challenge for the industry. It's a challenge for the industry to work with retailers. I think it will be exciting times. That means there will be some that will fall by the wayfare, and I think it's very important that there is strong collaboration with between the retailers and the sector. But I think it's a very interesting issue, and we are looking at commissioning another report next year. I mean, we talked about doing another one this year, but you know, the general trends there about the growth as well, the growth going forward is quite amazing. I know there's a number of my colleagues from Barclays here, and we're delighted to be here helping sponsoring the evening tonight. And I think we're doing Q&A at the end of that, Robert. So thank you very much.